Those involved in this illegal mining, they use choppers. They procure arms. They use choppers to come and cut away the gold, and they take them out of this country. Some retired military officers, army officers are involved in it. The day we can't tell the truth, this country cannot flourish.
Welcome to What's Trending on Green Growth TV. I am Divine Alex. In this episode, we delve into the trending news where the former governor of Edo State, Adams Oshiomhole, on Friday the 24th, accused some unnamed retired military generals of complicity in illegal mining activities. This is a pressing issue that intertwines environmental degradation, as these recent reports have surfaced, notably alleging that these retired generals are deeply involved in illegal mining activities across Nigeria. These claims do not only raise concerns about governance and security, but also it highlights the severe environmental consequences of such illicit operations. To explore this complex issue, I am joined by an esteemed guest, Dr. Angela Akamwa, an environmental manager, urban planner and lecturer at Chukwuemeka Odumegwu Ojukwu University, and an expert in sustainable resource management. Welcome to Green Growth TV, Dr. Akamwa.
Thank you very much. My pleasure.
Okay, now from your standpoint, how does this alleged involvement of military personnel in illegal mining excavate environmental issues, and what are the specific environmental damages?
Okay, when we talk about this ongoing issue, it brings to our attention the challenges and environmental consequences of illegal mining, specifically when it has to do with gold, because a lot of factors are involved. First of all, there has to be, deforestation of the particular area where the natural resources is being prospected. Because when you talk about gold, it is mined in rocks, and those rocks have to be cracked. A large volume of holes, deep holes, have to be made, into the earth's surface, and that will require removing every vegetation or trees within those areas. And most times it has to be in streams or rivers. So all these factors, whether the land or the streams or rivers, are being affected. And because in the process, heavy metals are released into the atmosphere, which is very toxic. So you have air pollution in place, you have water pollution in place, and you also have, degradation of the land area because trees are lost. And these trees are, they form a natural habitat for some animals and some plants. Some of them cannot be, physically seen with the eyes. And when these things are taken out, they lose, their permanent place, and this creates a problem. And with the level of endangered animals that are going into extinction, these are things that we should put in place in order not to lose these animals. Then also, you find out that when these heavy chemicals are released into the atmosphere, they go a long way in creating hazardous issues. It's not just about the short period of time that it takes place. These effects can linger over centuries, and they have a way of, spreading beyond boundaries. And that is why there should be a sustainable means when these things are being extracted from the earth's surface. We have a similar experience in 2010 in Zamfara State when gold was being extracted. It was noted that there was, an escalation of environmental consequences that led to, deaths of people. And repeatedly, we still have the same experience, which means that initial issue lingered over some time, and there was 92% report that children, died. A lot of children died from that consequence. So we see that it affects every aspect of the environment, from the plants to the animals, and also to human beings. Nobody, can escape from such consequences, and that is why any occasion that would warrant that should go through, proper sustainable means, so that these consequences can be managed at the initial stage. because at every stage of natural resources extraction, from the initial point of extracting and to the final phase of deposition, there are consequences, because most times when after these resources have been mined, there are wastes. They are called tailings. These dams are abandoned and they are not properly cleaned up. So those abandoned wastes are also sources of environmental pollution. And these are things that should put in place. And when it is carried out illegally, of course, we know that these things are not put into place. And of course, they would create problems, not just for the immediate community where it's being mined, but consequent, regions around that area. Thank you.
Can you explain how these alleged illegal mining contribute to climate change, and what are the long-term implications for Nigeria's natural resources?
Of course, when we talk about climate change, we are talking about the release of greenhouse gases, carbon dioxide, methane, and other ones that are associated with it. It has to do with the burning of fossil fuels. And when natural resources are being mined, heavy equipment are used in the process. And this equipment have to be powered by fuel. And they take long periods of time for the entire extraction process to be completed. So while all these are going on, carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases are being emitted into the environment. And of course, it creates problems and challenges. And also, when trees and vegetation around the area where those resources are being extracted are, removed from the earth's surface, it also releases carbon dioxide, because the trees act as a filter where they take in carbon dioxide and release oxygen to us. So when all these trees are deforested for the sake of mining, what we have is excess carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. And this is what, accelerates the issue of greenhouse gases. And of course, we know that according to Sustainable Development Goals 2030, we have a goal to at least halve the carbon dioxide emission in the environment, and also meet a net zero by 2050. And if we'll continue to do this, there's a challenge. What is that challenge? The challenge is that there will be continuous acceleration of these gases, which will escalate global warming, and at the same time, climate changes will happen. And climate change, of course, is a factor, or it's driven by human, actions, unsustainable human actions. And the challenge is that when these gases are, emitted in high quality that cannot be managed, they also create other problems or challenges in our society. Looking at Nigeria as a whole, we will see the effects of climate change in different regions. When you look at the Southeast region, we see excessive rainfall, which leads to flooding and erosion. And you see that most of the states in the Southeast region have been eroded by erosion and flooding, which is, a visible effect of climate change. And when you look at the northern region, we see, because of the poor vegetation, we see issues of desertification and drought. And these are huge challenges to neighboring communities where, some of their livelihoods, like those who are involved in farming, is heavily being affected. And of course, when food production is affected, what are the consequences? There's going to be scarcity, there's going to be hunger, and of course, there's going to be health issues, sicknesses that are related to nutrition and others. And that's why it is important that such things are taken into huge consideration. The government and all related shareholders and actors in the environment should take a positive outlook to ensure that some of these things that are causing huge problems, especially mining of natural resources, follow the due process. Thank you very much.
Okay, now you said something about sustainability goal for 2030, and now that takes us to the next question. Now, when we look at sustainability and solutions angle, right, what sustainable mining practices could be implemented to minimize environmental harm in Nigeria?
Okay, of course, when you talk about sustainable development, you are looking at ensuring that the activities of the present generation does not affect the future generation. That means whatever we have to do, we have to start putting it in place now, because some of the consequences we are suffering now is as a result of what had taken place before now. First of all, before development, any kind of development or projects are carried out, there should be a proper screening of that project, which is called an EIA, Environmental Impact Assessment. This process helps projects before it takes off, for that project to be totally screened, looking at the impacts and looking at how it's going to affect every other thing, both the physical, biological, and also the human aspect. So all major projects should go through an EIA process, because this will create expectations and also create room for government and other companies or other affected bodies to put things in place before it takes off. And also, when such natural processes, mining processes are ongoing, especially when it has to do with gold, because of the high level of toxic heavy metals that are released, it's needful that huge plantations should be ensured around that place. That means you don't just come to a land and quickly, once you have found out that there are deposits of gold or any other resources, and you start extracting. There needs to be a green belt, a plantation, green plantation around that area, because when these gases that are toxic, and also greenhouse gases are released, those plantation and green, green trees and all grasses together help in also minimizing the amount that is totally released into the environment. So when these things are in place, we should ensure that there are trees that will filter, the effects and the impact of these toxic chemicals that are being released into the environment. Because most times you don't have enough awareness, and that's where education and awareness comes in. People know that it can harm them, but to what extent? When the locals in that community know that their lives are endangered, not just their lives, the lives of their animals, their plants, and their streams. It will give them, a substantial community front to face up and speak out. Because most times when these things take place, they tell them about the advantages, the economic advantages that these things bring to them and to their community. Meanwhile, the environmental consequences are not properly spelled out. So there should be a proper education, creation of awareness, so that people can understand that the consequences from this, if not managed properly, can endanger their own lives. And also, there should be enforcement of our policies and our laws, guiding mining in Nigeria. We have laws, that have not been effectively implemented. When it is not effectively implemented or enforced, is a challenge, because the law is created to guide the people, especially the activities and how they manage the environment. If we go on doing things illegally, it's going to create huge problems for us. Then there should be community effort. Everybody should get on board. It's our environment, it's our health, it's our life, and it's our country. We don't have any other country. So everybody should come. It's a total community involvement, apart from government and those in government areas, related areas to the environment. Every other person should come in, irrespective of gender, irrespective of status. Every other person should come in, NGOs and all that, so that we can drive. Because when it has to do with protecting the environment, the natural resources and the process of extracting it, it is what affects everyone. Nobody's left out in the issue. So everybody should come in, ideas, suggestions, and communication should be effective. And even those who are in the academia should also come in, because they have a long way of interpreting the effects of these practices. So it's an affair for everyone to come in. It's not just a government business, but it's a Nigerian business. It's a Nigerian effort, and we need Nigerian unity to solve these problems. Thank you.
Okay, now we can't talk about sustainability in general without mentioning renewable energy. Now, can renewable energy sources and alternative livelihoods provide a sustainable solution for communities dependent on illegal mining?
Yes, it can, because that's the drive. If we must have a green economy, then renewable energy sources has to come into place. Now, the thing is, it's not something that is affordable for all, because when you talk about these communities, how can they afford, how can they tap into this renewable energy if it's not made affordable to them? So that's where the challenge comes in, because as we speak, it is something that is open only for the rich. The rich can can access solar panels and all that. But you find that these communities are poor. Most of them are neglected, and they can't easily access this. Even the fuel we're talking about, they are even trying to afford it. So we have a lot of work to do. We're here because government has to come in to see that these things can be accessible. Then also there is need for research to come in, because there are local ways or local means through technology where some of these things can be sourced. But do they have the know-how? Do they have the technology on how to do that? So if communities can be empowered financially, they have local means of deriving this energy from the wind, from the water, and natural resources, harnessing the energy from the sun. So if they're empowered, they have this indigenous knowledge where they can build up. It may not be so sophisticated like the ones we have, but they can build something within their own capacity that can still help in enjoying a level of renewable energy. Because renewable energy is the key to sustainable development, is the key to managing climate change. In fact, is the key to dealing with the 21st century challenge we have now. If these things are available to them, then we can talk about them looking at substitutes when it has to do with their livelihoods, because most of these community people are dependent. They are usually dependent on agriculture. So how can they power their plants, power their animals, using the sun and wind energy? These things can be provided for them. Then they could be factored into groups where we could bring in professionals to aid them, educate them, and teach them on these things, so that through enlightenment and proper education, and also when they are open to funds and grants, both locally sourced and international, then we're talking about moving and meeting up the 2050 net zero challenge of green gas emission. Thank you.
Okay. Now, let's look at the policy and enforcement perspective, right? How effective are Nigeria's current environmental policies in addressing impact of illegal mining, and what improvement do you think is needed?
First of all, when you talk about, we have policies, we have laws. They are existing, but they are not effective. Most times, their effectiveness is selective. We have them effective in some places to a degree, and in other places not effective. And that is where there's a problem, because if we don't create that general understanding, seeing Nigeria from like a global perspective, not looking at the structure, the regions, and allowing politics and corruption and other things to interplay as forces. These are things that draws us back when it has to do with enforcement. So our laws are good, but where we have the challenge is in the enforcement processes, the enforcement personnel that are involved, and somewhere along the chain, things are hijacked. So if we can deal with it from that perspective, we will see that at least we have somewhere we're going to. If you look at when it has to do with mining of oil, it has been a challenge in Nigeria, where governments are quite making their efforts, but you also see that there are some points where the communities are are going behind and doing things and breaking oil pipes and all that. So you see the sabotage comes in. So it is something that needs a total overhaul of our understanding and, our perspective to this. People are looking at it from what we can get from it, just like this alleged situation of gold we're talking about right now. You see that if it's a local community, it's a different thing. But here now, you have professionalism, you have money, you have power, and all that's being involved. So I think when it has to do with enforcing our policies, I think we should all come together to do that and see that the same discipline, is applied in all circumstances, irrespective of region, area, or the persons involved. No one is above the law.
Okay.
Thank you.
With this news of where Adams Oshiomhole